This conference will now be recorded.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to tonight's meeting of the Bethlehem Zoning Hearing Board. My name is Bill Fitzpatrick, and I will serve as chair for the hearings. Just for organizational sake, the way proceedings will go on tonight is the first hearing that will be conducted is actually a continuation of a hearing that occurred previously. We will be considering additional facts on that. Following that, with the second appeal and continuing for the remainder of the evening, that will constitute the regularly scheduled meeting of the Zoning Hearing Board. As I mentioned, my name is Bill Fitzpatrick. I'll serve as chair for tonight's hearing. Other members of the board with us tonight are sitting at the table separately from us, but to my left is Mr. Peter Schneck, and then to my left, Terry Novotnik, Linda Shea Gardner, and Jim Shantz. To my right is attorney Terry Fall, who will serve as solicitor and provide legal advice on tonight's proceedings. Jean Genova is with us. She will serve as court stenographer and will prepare a formal record of tonight's proceedings. The procedure that will follow will be as follows, is that there are agendas either posted here or online that'll outline the hearings. And I believe tonight we will be hearing actually 4 cases. I would mention to anyone who is interested in what had previously been item number 4, that being of 2066 Forge Run Road, that matter has been continued and will be scheduled at a later time in October. As the appeal is announced, the appellant will step to the table. Our court stenographer, Jean Genova, will swear the appellant in along with anyone else wishing to testify or ask questions at tonight's hearings. I would remind you that your testimony will be considered as sworn testimony and will be included as a part of the formal record of tonight's proceedings. Members of the audience with us electronically, online, wishing to question will have an opportunity to do so. They will later in the proceedings also have an opportunity to introduce comment or testimony. But the initial phase will be the testimony by the appellant, followed by questions by either the board or members of the audience. Only following the completion of the testimony of the appellant will we be receiving testimony or comments from members of the audience. We ask that members of the audience avoid repetitive questions or testimony. And then lastly, and very importantly to anyone here, anyone aggrieved by the decision of the board may appeal to either Lehigh or Northampton County Court within 30 days following the issuance of the written decision of the Zoning Hearing Board. Attorney Fall, was there anything additional that you wanted to add?
That's nothing at this time.
All right. The very first matter that we will be taking up is a continuation or an item that had been essentially tabled pertaining to 921 Beverly Avenue. And we would ask anyone interested in this or any other case this evening to raise your right hand so you can be sworn in.
Of all parts of the testimony that you shall give in this proceeding should be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, and as you shall answer to God at the last day. You so swear?
I do. Yes.
Attorney Fall, since this is actually a matter that had previously been tabled, can you brief us just as a reminder or a summation of what's occurred prior to and how we should proceed tonight?
Yes. This matter was heard on August 12th. At that time, Mr. Kurtz, who's here this evening, presented a petition for seeking a variance with respect to property at 921 Beverly Avenue. That property was already non-conforming due to the fact that the backyard was only 32 feet rather than the required 35 feet. Mr. Kurtz proposed to reduce that to 12 feet for the purpose of allowing him to expand the property which he owns adjoining this property, located at 1917 West Union Boulevard. The matter came before as a request for a variance. At the original hearing, the board felt that it would be appropriate for the Planning Commission to provide input regarding whether or not this lot line adjustment would be acceptable. The city planning office, through its solicitor, has recommended a policy that in the event that there is a question about which should come first, that the zoning hearing board should hear the request prior to the planning commission ruling on that. At this time, Mr. Kurtz, that there's no requirement at law that it go in that fashion. The city zoning ordinance does not make a requirement. The city policy would be to have the zoning hearing board hear it first. But in this case, I would ask you, do you want to proceed in that fashion, or would you prefer to go through the planning commission and then come before the zoning hearing board?
I believe from my understanding that it would be the best case scenario to proceed with the zoning hearing board first.
So your request is to hear this tonight, the request to get a variance?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Do you have any further testimony? The same group heard your testimony a month ago. Do you have any additional testimony which you would like to present at this time?
Or Mr. Kurtz, if you would like to recap in any way what was discussed. I know Attorney Full, I think, outlined the facts as we heard them. But if you would like to offer clarification or just tell us your position.
Yeah, sure. I can go over it. And again, any questions that anybody has because of, it was a month ago, I'd be happy to answer as well. So the setback for a lot to have two access points, two driveways, it would be 100 feet as far as the city ordinance tells me. I have 90 feet right now. So I'm requesting that I add the 20 feet to get to over the 100 feet of requirement. That way I could have my backyard back and allow my garage to exit on the alley instead of the driveway taking up my whole entire yard to adjoin to the other driveway. That's basically it in a nutshell. I know I did talk about some dreams I had down the road to do with the land, but really the gist of it is that I'm looking to extend the property that's already non-conforming a little bit further non-conforming.
Okay, may I ask a question of the zoning officer, Mr. Piper? And I apologize, did I overlook you in the introductions when we started out?
If you did, I missed it.
Well, and if I did, it's only because you're so important, I wanted to do a special introduction. When, as I recall, the original application, the requested relief was that of a dimensional variance
Correct,
from the minimum rear yard setback,
correct,
and was that the only relief requested?
correct.
And that is still the case.
That is still the case.
Any questions from members of the zoning hearing board? Mr. Schneck?
No, I think I remember.
Mr. Novotny?
No.
Ms. Gardner? Mr. Shantz?
Just one, and I wish I would have asked it the first time around, but I'll ask it now. Does the removal of the 20 feet of property from the lot on Beverly Avenue, I know you own both properties, does it affect either of the property values in any way?
I actually happen to be a real estate professional. That's the industry I'm in. And if it does whatsoever, it certainly wouldn't be drastic. It puts both properties roughly at around 1/3 of an acre after the adjustments made.
So both will maintain the same value that they currently have now? If they're both, I know you bought would you be able to sell the one for what you bought, what you paid for it if you were moving it down the road?
I would say at least that, yeah, I would say so, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Mr. Kurtz, if I could, and since we are proceeding with the zoning hearing board initially, consideration of a variance requires some illustration of a hardship that you're overcoming. Can you describe what that is, please?
The hardship in that situation for me would be that when I pulled the permit to put the garage in, I wasn't allowed to exit it to the street. And due to that fact, my entire backyard is basically an asphalt driveway at this point. I just did it because I had to comply with the current zoning rules, but that would be the hardship, is that the driveway consumes my backyard, and I'd really like to exit it right to the alley.
Okay, thank you. One last chance. Anyone from the board? Okay, did you?
Yeah, just to clarify his statement, the hardship you described is not for the property that you're asking the variance for, correct? It's your other property that's next to it?
Yeah, that would be correct. Yep.
Okay, is there a hardship on that property?
On 921 Beverly?
Yeah.
It's just, there's not a particular hardship on it. No, it's just the fact that it already is non-conforming, but there's no hardship there.
Okay, thank you. Are there any members with us online who would wish to ask a question, Mr. Kurtz? If so, please unmute your microphone and identify yourself. Hearing none, I would open the floor for any testimony or comments from members of the audience online. And if you choose to introduce a comment or testimony, would you please unmute your microphone and identify yourself? Hearing none, Mr. Kurtz, have any final statements you'd like to make before we deliberate?
No, sir.
Attorney Fall, anything from you?
Nothing, thank you.
All right, at this point, I'd like to go off the record into executive session so we can deliberate on this hearing. All right, Gene, I'd like to go back on the record and I would welcome a motion from a member of the board.
Mr. Chairman, I would like to make a motion at this time to approve the appeal of Michael Kurtz for a dimensional variance to reduce the minimum rear yard setback from 35 feet, from 32 feet to 12 feet, subject to the condition that Mr. Kurtz also obtain approval from the Planning Commission for the lot line adjustment.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Mr. Novatnik,
Yes.
Ms. Gardner,
No.
Mr. Shantz,
Yes.
Mr. Fitzpatrick,
Yes.
Mr. Schneck.
No.
Your appeal's been granted by a vote of 3-2. I might encourage you to, you'll note that it was conditionally granted based on seeking the appropriate approval from planning. You may want to wait for the written decision before you proceed, but you may also want to check in with Mr. Piper as to how to proceed next.
Yeah, I will, thanks.
Okay,
In regards to the written decision, does that come in the mail?
Yes,
It does.
yes.
Thank you.
good luck with the project.
Thank you.
Well, that's what we wanted to do. I think it makes sense to find out if it's good planning first, but that's not what the city wanted to do, so. Yeah.
Thank you, I appreciate that.
Are you doing this next one?
I am.
Yes, it's Lehigh.
Unless you're not letting me.
Yeah, you have to get Jane's approval.
No, I had to file it. The other file.
Sorry, Gene, I'm gonna have to lower this to talk every now and then, okay? Otherwise, I
Just don't
feel I'm
look at
talking
it.
up my own nose. All right, everybody, at this point, we are going to continue, but this will be the regularly scheduled meeting of the Bethlehem Zoning Hearing Board. The announcements previously made will apply equally to this matter, and the first matter before us in the regular session is that of 124 East Morton Street and the appeal of Lehigh University. Can you tell us when the property was posted?
Oh, you're asking me, sorry. Sure, Kate Durso from Fitzpatrick and Zabuga, here on behalf of Lehigh University. I have an exhibit packet that shows proof of the postings. It was posted on August 31st, 2020 at 4:14 PM.
That's fine, and we'll be able to proceed. What I would like to do is swear in everyone who has not already been sworn in on this matter, including anyone with us online. So if you have not been sworn in, would you please stand and raise your right hand?
The testimony that you shall give in this proceeding should be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, and that you shall answer to God at the last great day. You says well?
Yes.
You may be seated.
Thank you. And did I understand that you have a new packet of exhibits?
Yeah, I put them in a package for all the board members. They were submitted electronically to Craig. So he has everything. I just have one.
That's fine. We'd like to have the hard copies here, please. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Nice to see you.
There's-
Yes, please. Thank you.
Okay, Attorney Durso, we can proceed if you're ready.
Sure. Can you state your name for the record?
Sure. Brent Stringfellow.
And Brent, where do you work?
I work at Lehigh University.
And what is your job position at Lehigh University?
I am the Associate Vice President of Facilities and the University Architect.
And have you appeared before the zoning hearing board previously for Lehigh University projects?
Yes, I have.
And specifically, did you test? Sorry, sorry. Okay. Sorry, we'll go. Did you testify before the zoning hearing board for variances for the proposed health science technology building?
Yes.
Can you briefly explain why the Health Science Technology Building and the College of Health are critical for Lehigh University's expansion.
So the Health Science and Technology Building serves two major purposes for Lehigh. One is to provide modern research lab capacity. Lehigh has not built too many research labs in the recent decades, and this is a need that was identified midway through the past decade. In addition, as you may have read, Lehigh has launched its College of Health, its first new college in 100 years, and this building is intended to support that college.
And is the building to be located at the intersection of East Morton and Webster Streets?
Yes, it is.
And is it within the IO zoning district?
Yes.
And is the building currently under construction?
Yes.
And what will be the height of the building?
The final height of the building will be approximately 105 feet to the top of the penthouse.
Okay. And was this specific location at that intersection specifically chosen for this building, and why?
Yes, it was. A number of goals came about in designing the building. One was, again, the research labs put us in close proximity to our existing research labs at the Whitaker Sinclair Mudd laboratories. In addition, the College of Health is going to have a community focus as part of its mission. And we felt it was important at this building being at the gateway to Lehigh to have a community facing presence as part of the design.
And will the building be joined to the Sinclair and Whitaker labs by a pedestrian walking bridge?
Yes.
And did Lehigh University engage Wilson HGA to develop signage for the building?
Yes, we did.
Okay, I'm going to first go to the exhibit pack, and just for the record, exhibit A1 and A2 are those postings that I referenced earlier.
Thank you.
So we'll go to exhibit B. There's an exhibit B1 and an exhibit B2. Can you explain for the record what exhibit B1 shows?
Exhibit B1 is a elevation of the north side of the new building. On the left-hand side would be the entry that would be at the corner of Morton and Webster Street. On the right-hand side would be the main entry that would be at the termination of Adams Street and along Morton Street. You can see the Lehigh sign that we are discussing today at the top of the building on the right-hand side, which is actually the west side of the building.
And then we'll describe exhibit B2.
Exhibit B2 is a zoom in of the Lehigh sign itself that we are proposing that would be at the top on the mechanical penthouse, again at the southwest corner of the building, facing Morton Street and the north side of Bethlehem.
And so the sign that's before the board this evening is just going to say, is proposed to just say Lehigh.
It will just say Lehigh in the typeface as shown here.
Okay. And will it be embedded within the corrugated metal panel envelope of the building's penthouse wall?
Yes, it will be. It will be integral to the construction of the building. It is not applied to the building, nor does it stand off from the building.
And approximately at what elevation then would the sign be located on the building?
The elevation will be between 82 feet 2 inches and 96 feet 2 inches as measured from the west entry at Adams and Morton Street. So if, again, referring to B1, if you look at the right-hand side of the drawing, the main entry that you see, again, which would be the west end of the building, the height would be, the 88 feet would be taken from that entry elevation.
And did you also have the architects prepare some renderings to show what the sign would look like on the building?
Yes, we did.
Okay, I'm going to draw the board's attention to Exhibit C, which contains a number of pictures labeled as C1, C2, C3, C4, C5, C6, and C7. So let's go with C1 first. Can you explain to the board what C1 shows?
C1 is a eye-level view at the termination of Adams Street across Morton Street, looking towards that southwest elevation of the building, one of the primary entries to the building, again facing the community side. And you can see the sign at the top of the entry sequence here.
Okay, and then C2?
C2 is the same view, but showing the sign with the lighting on.
And then C3?
C3, again, the same view, but at nighttime.
And then C4,
C4 is looking at the other end of the building at the corner of Morton and Webster. This is the second entry that at the eastern side that also opens to the community. And here you can see towards the right-hand side, the sign we're proposing, again, at the end of the opposite end of the building.
and then C5,
C5 is an identical view to the previous one, showing the sign as lit at night.
and then C6,
C6 is a bird's eye view, again, looking at the Adams Street and Morton Street intersection, looking at the relationship of the building to the rest of the Lehigh campus. If you're familiar with the campus, you can see the outlines of the church in the background, as well as the complex of science buildings that are immediately behind it. And this is a dusk view, so it shows you the sign lit up in the evening.
and then exhibit C7.
C7 is a similar view at full nighttime rendering, again, showing what the sign would look like at the nighttime.
So with regard to the lighting, what type of lighting of the sign is proposed?
So the light will be a programmable custom-shaped LED fixture that will be behind the corrugated perforated panels that are part of the construction of the penthouse, and they'll illuminate through those perforations. The fixtures themselves will be shaped in the form of the letter, so it'll be a consistent, continuous light.
And is it proposed that the sign would be lit all day?
Currently it is, when Lehigh would not be in session, or there are circumstances we might not have it lit, but when Lehigh would be in session, the intent would be to have the sign lit.
But would the output be different through the day?
No, it would be consistent.
Consistent?
Yep.
It just would be different?
You would see
depending-
it would be less visible during the day, but it would still be on.
And do the renderings accurately represent what they would look like for the lighting that's proposed?
That's correct. Yes, they do.
Okay. And what is the size of the proposed sign?
The overall area is about 101 square feet.
And it's proposed to be located on the north facade. What is the size of the north facade of the building?
26,840 square feet.
So what percentage of the north facade of the building does the sign represent?
0.38%.
And is the sign going to only be on the penthouse portion of the building?
Yes, that is correct.
And so what percentage of the penthouse frontage does the sign take up?
The penthouse frontage is equivalent to about 4,675 square feet. So the sign will take up 2.2% of that overall area.
And has Lehigh requested a variance because the sign is proposed to extend above the roof of the building since it's proposed on the penthouse?
Yes.
Is a variance also required because of the fact that the sign is more than 25 feet above grade and larger than 22.5 square feet in size?
Yes.
And although the total wall signage complies with the percentage requirements of the ordinance, since it doesn't exceed 10% of the face, is a variance needed just because of the size that's proposed?
Yes.
What are the primary hours of operation for the building?
Currently, academic buildings at Lehigh are open from 7 a.m. to 10 p.m. and we imagine the hours would be the same for this building.
And in your opinion, is the proposed sign important in identifying the building?
Yes, it is.
And what was one of the purposes of the sign then?
One of the purposes was, again, going back, that the building is a gateway to Lehigh, what we think of as a very welcoming and open gateway to Lehigh, but also a marker that this is where the university resides. Currently, from a distance or as you approach the campus, there's nothing that indicates, unless you're familiar with the campus already, that that is Lehigh University. So we thought this was an appropriate way to indicate that on a kind of symbolic level. And again, as a building that we see as an important gateway between the city and the campus.
Did you also have the architects in working with Lehigh representatives prepare some panoramics to show what the sign would look like from various views around the city?
Yes, we did.
Okay, going to draw the board's attention to the Exhibit D package, which has 4 photographs. We'll go first with Exhibit D1. Can you explain what Exhibit D1 shows?
D1 would be the view essentially from the Hill to Hill Bridge, starting to look across to Southside Bethlehem and South Mountain. And you can see the sign a bit to more towards the left-hand side of the building or left-hand side of the image.
And obviously you can see the Fritsch sign in the,
You can see the Fritsch sign in the foreground.
and then Exhibit D2.
Exhibit D2 is a close-up looking more, zooming in more specifically at the Lehigh campus. So you can see a number of the towers. You can see the church steeple towards the right-hand side. And then off to the left, you can see the sign as it would appear at the top of the HST, Health Science Technology Building.
And it's slightly just above the trees there.
Correct.
Exhibit D3.
Exhibit D3 is looking across the Fahey Bridge, more directly towards the Lehigh campus. So along the New Street axis, and then to the left, again, just rising above the trees, you can see the sign at the top of the Health Science Technology Building.
And Exhibit D4.
D4, again, more of a closer approach as you would be coming over the Fahey Bridge along New Street. You can see the third new project to the right, and then to the left, you can see the Health Science Technology Building with the sign illuminated.
So based on these exhibits in Exhibits D1 through D4, in your opinion, will the sign have limited visibility to some areas outside of the city?
Yes, I mean, the idea of the sign is not for it to be something that is overly bright or obtrusive. It's intended to be something that fits into the context of both the city and Lehigh in general, but yet be visible, be an indicator, be something that people can see, and again, as a landmark for people to associate with the university.
And in your opinion, do you believe that the sign that's proposed is consistent with the spirit, purposes, and intent of the zoning ordinance?
Yes.
Do you believe that the sign is in the best interest of the city and Lehigh and for the convenience of the community?
Yes.
In your opinion, would granting the requested variances for the proposed sign cause any adverse impact on public health, safety, or welfare?
No.
Based on the size of the building and the facade of the building, is the proposed sign suitable for that property and that building?
Yes.
Will the sign be designed, constructed, operated, and maintained so as to be in harmony with the existing and intended character of the general vicinity?
Yes, it will be. So in terms of bringing up maintenance, it'll be maintained to Lehigh standards. In terms of taking care of the sign, making sure it's operable. We wouldn't be missing letters. You wouldn't have blinkered out letters or things like that. So.
And do you feel that the sign would substantially change the character of the surrounding neighborhood?
No.
Do you believe that based on the sign that's proposed, is the university requesting the minimum relief necessary to have a sign placed on the proposed building?
Yes.
That's all the questions I have of this week.
Okay, thank you. Questions from members of the board? Mr. Schnepp?
Sure. Out of curiosity, how did you come up with the square footage of your sign at 101? Or are you just taking the actual area of just the letters themselves?
Those are measured, the letters themselves.
So not like the rectangle, it's just.
No, because it's not, it is just strictly the letters. The rest of the field is integral as part of the building cladding. So it was measured as just the letters.
Okay. And then is your penthouse metal panel perforations, is that the same on the south facade? So is there any light leak from your sign on the other facade of the building?
No, because the penthouse wraps around the entire building, and there's actually rooms inside there. They're all mechanical spaces within that. So those are all, it doesn't go through to the other side of the building. There's spaces and equipment and so forth on that. So it's all contained within the fixture itself.
Okay. And then again, more out of curiosity. So are the letters in between like a metal panel and then your sheathing of the building? Or
Yes,
is
so,
it
so
inside?
most of the penthouse is a metal corrugated sheathing.
Okay.
And what happens is where the light fixtures occur is then their perforations go into the sheathing. So it's not so much that there's cutouts, it's more that there's you have these little perforations in the metal. So again, the surface of the penthouse is very continuous, and then the light shines through where you have these perforations occurring. So it'd be similar to a screen
Okay.
type effect.
I guess-
So actually, if the lights were off, there's a good chance you wouldn't even see the sign in those circumstances.
Right. And then how is your facilities team accessing it? You said you're going to maintain it.
Right. So the good part about this being the mechanical penthouse is we have the facilities people will be up in that space fairly often, and that gives us direct access, and it can be accessed from the backside. You don't have to go out onto the front of the building, so you can be able to access it from the backside for maintenance, repair, replacement, so forth.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then you're basically saying that this is a marker for Lehigh University, not just the building that's operating till. Do you have other facilities on campus that are open later hours?
So most of our buildings are open until 10 p.m. Well, not in the current circumstances where all buildings are actually only open to Lehigh community members. But in normal times, the buildings do remain open until typically 10 o'clock. They are open. We do not, normally you're not required to have a Lehigh ID. They are open to the public. So particularly areas like Zollner Arts Center, which also has our art gallery, the libraries, a lot of these buildings are used by the community. And this building, recognizing that it would be literally opening onto the community, the expectation is that it would be open and accessible.
Okay, I guess, are they open beyond 10 p.m.?
Not to the public. Typically only if you have permission. We do open up our libraries during study periods to be 24/7 for the students, but you need card swipe access after 10 o'clock.
Okay, and then you also mentioned that you have the new college coming in that is health service community based. Is the community going to be going there for any health services?
So we do have a space in the building that's actually a community programming room, and there could be a variety of aspects to community work and service that may happen there. Right now, the College of Health does not necessarily have a clinical focus. A lot of it has to do more with what is called population health. So there's things, if you think about things like nutrition counseling, those types of, that type of work, and we fully envision that happening within the building.
And then for those type of things, do you envision people having trouble finding that building coming from a little bit outside the community?
I would hope not. I mean, it would be pretty clearly marked. I know that it's in a pretty
without the sign.
Without the sign,
yeah.
I think people could find the building without the sign. Yes, from a directional. The sign is not intended as a directional, necessarily as a directional sign in terms of saying go to the building with the sign.
But it could help.
It would certainly help.
Okay.
I think. You know, if you said you're going to go to the building with a Lehigh sign, I would expect that could become shorthand.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. That's all I have.
Hey, thank you, Mr. Steck. Mr. Novotnik, any questions?
Yes. I was not on the board when the approval of the building was rendered, but was this discussed at all, that the possibility of a sign going on this building at that point in time?
Not to my recollection.
So this was a decision made recently, and I'm curious as to why the decision was made and was not a part of the original request.
So part of it would, I think early on there had been some discussion and some thought that there would be a sign up there. At the time we went for the original variance, I don't think we had decided whether or not we would have that. That was a kind of internal discussion. And as the building design progressed and developed, I think more and more people felt that this was a good idea worth pursuing. So
But just to follow up Mr. Schneck's question, it's really not a sign for this particular building. It's a sign to advertise the university.
Correct. And that's part of the reason the sign's limited to just saying Lehigh. We don't propose for it to say health science technology or anything of that nature up there.
Okay, thank you.
Ms. Shea Gardner.
Yes, are you proposing other signage on this building? That would kind of require, a variance, a further variance?
Not that I believe. I mean, we'll have standard building signage, so all the addresses, the building name, all the things that are essentially required by code, as well as kind of markers that are in compliance with our university standards. But no major signage, nothing that we would expect to be before this board again.
Okay, Mr. Shantz.
Yeah. The application says the proposed sign is going to be 660 square feet. I'm reading our meeting notes correctly.
Where are you reading it from?
The meeting notice?
From Craig's notice. I don't have
Yeah,
that.
Mr. Piper, can you clarify?
Certainly. So the legal ad does indicate that the sign is 660 square feet. That is based upon the definition of area of sign in the ordinance, which includes the letters and the background. So we would take the overall dimensions. That's how we're coming up with 660 as opposed to the 101 that was previously testified to.
Okay. Why determination for such a large sign? I mean, would you get the same effect if the sign was 500 feet or 400 feet or?
Well, I think the design of the sign with the architects really was to design something that felt in scale with the building. And again, with the way the sign's designed, and that it's not something that's applied, it really is kind of emerging out of the cladding. What we wanted to look at was something that felt like it was an appropriate size and scale with the building. So that really is where the through various design studies where the final size came up with in terms of the letter's height. I would say, I mean, we didn't bring examples of like the different studies, but that's part of what the architects went through, is kind of looking at what different sizes tended to fit within the proportion and scale of the building.
Considering you're asking for a dimensional variance, would it hurt the building at all if it was say a 400 square foot sign versus a 660 foot square sign?
I couldn't answer that question right now because I don't see the example of that. I don't know if we would necessarily pursue that at that point. I mean, we feel that this is the best design that we're putting forward, and do feel that it is it is fitting for the scale of the building and the university. So that's how I would leave my answer on that.
Okay. And to follow up on a question that Mr. Novotny asked earlier, there's going to be no signage at all that on this building anywhere that's going to recognize this building as your College of Science?
No, there will be. So there's standard. We have a standard building plaque signage that will be located on the building. That's all as of right. Some of those signs, those do indicate, those are actually required by the city in terms of the naming, the address, and identification for fire department. So that will be there. There will be a sign probably at the entry that would indicate the name of the building, whether it's still health science and technology or name for a person or something else. So,
thank you.
Yep.
Thank you. Just for the purpose of clarity, the 660 square feet, I believe, Mr. I'm sorry, is it Stringfellow?
Stringfellow.
That's actually the complete frame and everything, but the actual sign itself comprises just that which says Lehigh. Am I correct?
Correct. This goes back to the earlier question about
Right.
the kind of theoretical rectangle that the sign would fit in. That would be
I was just asking that for clarity's sake. Yeah, so can you clarify that the size that says Lehigh, what is the size of that?
That is 101 square feet.
All right.
I did want to, the other thing I would clarify in terms of, even if you were to look at the 660 square feet, that still comprises less than 10% of the overall facade dimension. That takes us from what under 101 square feet would be 0.38% of the north facade to 1.8% of the north facade if you were to count the 660.
Can you comment on the sign itself will be backlit? Am I
Correct.
Correct. Assuming that lights do fail from time to time,
Mm-hmm.
and they may fail at a time when they couldn't be replaced immediately, do they in any way in your mind create a distraction to motorists or anyone in the vicinity?
Well, I think if you had a situation where signs were blinking or doing something like that, we would immediately turn them off. I don't think we would have the lights on in the sign unless it was fully functioning.
How do you determine whether it's blinking or fully functioning?
I think we'd probably wait for somebody to call us or one of us would drive by and say
Somebody
that the
complain.
light's blinking. So, we would turn it off and not operate it unless it was fully functioning.
Okay, thank you.
So, yep.
Yes, Mr. Schneck, you have one last.
Yeah, just to follow up on what Bill was saying, your facility staff is pretty much 24/7
That's correct.
doing rounds, so they would notice something like
Right.
that pretty quickly.
Yeah, we also depend on our police department, who's always doing rounds. So between our crews that are working 3 shifts and the police department doing rounds of campus, we get a pretty good sense of what's going on at any given time. So if something like that were occurring, we'd find out about it pretty quickly, I would presume.
Okay, thank you. Yep. Attorney Fall, anything from you?
I do. A couple of questions. The advertising speaks about a operation from dusk to dawn. But your testimony suggests it will be more than dusk to dawn. What are you seeking specific hours or?
I believe, yes. I don't know if we were seeking specific hours.
No, the reason it was in the notice is that there's a requirement that we're seeking the variance from that says that the lighting is only supposed to be when the building is open and being used. And since it was going to be used past when the building would potentially be closed, we had asked for a variance to allow it to continue to be lit.
Okay. As I look at the ordinance, there
We
is
probably should say dusk to dawn as opposed to dawn to dusk.
well, that was one of the questions I had. It's going to be lit there's a section of the ordinance which says that lights should be off in the residential district between 10 p.m. and 7 a.m. Would that be acceptable to you?
But it's not in a residential.
Well, it's a residential and an institutional district.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Well, it's the institutional overlay zone. Is that what you're saying?
It is, and I'm looking at section 1320.08, section 12. There are residences located immediately across the street from this property, I believe. Is that
Yes,
correct?
That is correct.
Is this light going to be visible from those residences?
The ones directly across the street, it may not be because of the height differential. Those are all two-story residences, but it would depend on the angle, but yes, it could be visible.
Do you know I guess I should ask this question, Mr. Piper. Is there a limit on the light candles for a sign in the city?
The area of the section of the ordinance that does cover this as lighting control specific to 1318.25. And it does indicate that light should not spill over in excess of 0.1 horizontal foot candles to a residential lot.
Have you done any testing or to determine Mr. Stringfellow, sorry, I don't know who I'm talking to. Have you done any testing to determine what spillover light will be in the adjoining residential area?
We have not. I could verify with our architects if they have done a study. They are on the call, I believe.
If I might, Mr. Pfeiffer, can you clarify that when you talk about spillover of illumination? That doesn't apply to just visibility of a lighted sign, and it has to do with the illumination of the property in question.
Correct.
We could get clarification on the Zoom. Attention, or maybe, I don't know if Craig had to let them in or.
One has actually unmuted themselves, so
Well, why don't we ask that person to unmute their microphone, identify themselves, and then
Be sworn in too.
yeah, we'll also confirm that you've been sworn in. Can you unmute your microphone and identify yourself?
So I'm David Feth. I'm with the architectural firm Wilson HGA.
Have you been sworn in?
Yes, I have.
Okay.
So no, we have not done foot candle illumination studies for the adjacent lot.
Can you offer an opinion with regard to spillover of illumination from the sign to any adjacent properties?
My professional opinion would be that the immediately adjacent properties on the north side of Morton Street would see very little, if any, direct light from this signage, given the differential of height.
Okay. Attorney Fall, did you have?
I guess the next question would be are there any residential buildings that are located at an angle that would allow it to be visible that would have a spillover effect?
I don't know that I can answer that. I just don't know the lay of the land relative to the residential lots beyond the immediate vicinity.
I think I could step in and say there's nothing in the immediate proximity that would be close enough to have any sort of spillover from that. Residential, correct.
Mr. Chairman?
Let's make sure. Be right back.
Just getting back to that other question, is a limitation of operation between 7 a.m. and 10 p.m. acceptable?
If that would be a prerequisite for getting approval for the sign, yes.
I'm just looking at the ordinance.
Understood.
I have no power to make any decisions.
Okay.
Any further, Attorney Fall?
No.
Okay, I'm sorry, Mr. Shantz. Thanks for being patient.
Oh, thank you, sir. Your exhibits D1 through D4 show the sign in relationship to the senior citizen high rise, maybe half a block away, if that, maybe about 300 feet away. Will the senior citizen high rise be able to see that sign?
Yes.
And will it have any direct effect on any of those residents in that building?
I don't believe so. The illumination is not one because of the method of illumination. It's not like a spotlight effect or that vibrant. And again, the sign itself, because it's shining through the perforations, is somewhat subtle. It's not intended. It's not throwing off a tremendous amount of light. So it will be visible, but it will not create enough illumination to cause shadows or disruption or light within those residences.
I'd also like to thank you for that. I'd also like to go back to one question that Attorney Fall had, and I guess it's in relationship to how you actually requested this in the legal advertisement. Your legal advertisement goes from dusk to dawn, which I would presume being sundown to sunrise. These days, somewhere around 8 p.m. to maybe about 7 a.m.
Mm-hmm.
And Attorney Fall just asked if you wouldn't mind, and I'm sorry, Attorney Fall, the hours that the sign would be off in the residential zone would be what, 10 to 7 a.m.?
Yeah, it's maybe no sign should be illuminated between the hours of 10 p.m. and 7 a.m.
Now,
In other words, overnight.
that would eliminate about, if you were agreeable to that, that would eliminate about, I'd say 80% of the time frame, the normal time frame that you would want the sign to be lit under, if your advertisement was correct. Could you live with that condition, Attorney Fall, considering you're eliminating 80% of the time frame that the sign would be lit?
As I said, I think, I mean, if it was the consideration for us getting approval, I think we could. I think our preference would be to have the flexibility if we were to, whether it was a special event, say it was Parents Weekend or something of that nature, that if we, for some reason, felt we would want to illuminate it longer, that we would have that option. But we also understand and respect the city's concern about if there's spillover, so.
If we as a board were to say the sign could be lit during the dusk portion of the time frame that the building would be open, what you said, I believe, was what, 10 or 11 o'clock?
Correct.
If the sign were to be shut off at 11 at night and turned back on if it's a dark morning at 7 in the morning,
Mhm.
and run during those hours, would that be acceptable?
Again, yes, I mean, we would prefer to have the flexibility to be able to adjust that, but that certainly would give us, I think, for the time period that most people will be looking at towards Lehigh and for what we've talked about in terms of, you know, standing as this kind of gateway, I think that would more than meet the needs that we would have for the sign.
Mr. Sternfellow, at the risk of interrupting, your desire would be to be able to have this sign on 24 hours a day if you could.
Yeah, and I don't mean that in terms of that we would necessarily do that. It would just be more that I think it would be more of a concern, I think, about a successor of mine or a team 5 years down the road, kind of like starts leaving the lights on or something, or there is a special event that we would say, hey, can we keep it up for Parents Weekend or things like that to be aware of. But again, there's also nothing wrong with us knowing there's certainly plenty of things that we know are codified by the city that we make part of our daily operations, and knowing that light goes off at 10 is something we could do, or
The
11.
reason I was asking, what is it, the relief that you're asking? So you would like to have the latitude to keep it on all day and all night if so be, and then it is up to this body to indicate if we're going to restrict in any way.
Correct.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Shantz, anything else?
Nope.
Anything else from members of the board? At this point, is there anyone attending this hearing virtually who would like to ask a question? If so, would you please unmute your microphone and identify yourself? I'd remind you that this portion is for questions only. If you desire to ask a question of the testimony you just heard, please unmute your microphone and identify yourself. Hearing none. Attorney Durso, do you have another witness?
I have no other witnesses. We just like to formally submit all our exhibits into evidence.
Okay, at this point then, I just want to canvass the attendees virtually. Is there anyone desiring to offer comment or testimony? If so, I would ask you to please unmute your microphone and identify yourself. Hearing none, did you have any closing remarks you wanted to make before we deliberate?
Just briefly, obviously, if you looked at just the size of the sign, it sounds like that Lehigh's asking for a lot, but if you look at it in perspective of the size of the building, how it's going to be integrated into the building, how it's going to be limited visibility, that it is appropriate for that building, and that given the nature of that building, the desire of Lehigh to work with the community, that it would be appropriate for the variances to be granted. That's all I have.
Thank you. Attorney Fowler, are we okay to adjourn? Did you have anything you?
No, I think
that matters. Okay, Gene, we're going to go off the record into executive session, please. We'd like to go back on the record, and I would welcome a motion from a member of the board.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd make a motion to approve the requested relief by Lehigh University as advertised.
And do we have a second to that motion?
I'll second.
Mr. Schneck, I understand you would like to attach a separate condition.
I request a condition be placed that the sign is illuminated only during operating hours.
I'll second that motion.
All right, and Attorney Fall, if we're in order, I would like to take a vote on the condition that has been proposed only before we
fine.
get to the main motion.
Yes.
So the condition that's on the floor would limit the hours of illumination. Mr. Piper, can you call the roll on that? So a vote yes would be to limit the hours of operation. A vote no would be to impose no hours of limitation for the illumination.
Mr. Schneck,
Yes.
Mr. Novatnik,
No.
Ms. Gardner,
No,
Mr. Shantz,
Yes.
Mr. Fitzpatrick.
No. The motion on the condition is denied. And now to the main motion on the floor. Mr. Piper, would you call the roll?
Mr. Schneck,
Yes.
Mr. Novatnik,
Yes.
Ms. Gardner,
yes.
Mr. Shantz,
Yes.
Mr. Fitzpatrick.
Yes. Your appeal's been granted. Good luck with the project. Might be wise to wait for the written decision to proceed.
Absolutely. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your time.
Good luck. All right. Oh my God.
It's so hard to do.
Yes, you can let him in. Yes.
We'll be replacing Attorney Fall as our solicitor. Appeal number 3, Appeal 4 has been continued.
Right.
I see some of you folks have been allowed in from the hallway, so welcome.
Thank you.
I'm good.
All right, the next appeal that we'll be hearing is that of 27 West Etwine Street. The first question will be to swear in everyone who will be either testifying or asking questions or offering testimony remotely. So could everyone who has not yet been sworn in, please stand and be sworn in.
Raise your right hand, please. You swear by Almighty God, the truth of your own hearts, that the testimony that you shall give in this proceeding shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. And as you shall answer to God at the last great day. You said swear?
Yes.
You may be seated.
Thank you. Can you tell us when the property was posted? You would have had a yellow sign to post?
Yes, it was
Can you tell us when?
last week, the first day of last week. Monday.
Monday? Okay,
Okay.
so 8:31.
My name is Lisa Arechiga.
And Michael Orechiga.
So you're the applicant. Okay. Okay, when you proceed. Tell us what it is you're requesting.
Okay. We live at 27 West Etwine Street. We've lived there, about 34 years. We thought about putting in a pool many years, and we didn't just think of it because of COVID going on this year. My husband got it for us as a Christmas present this past year, but then we had the bad luck of having COVID this year. But anyway, gave it some time to realize everything, the requirements we need. And because we live in the RT district, the high density district, we're required to have a 20-foot setback from the front of the property, which is also the front of the street. The reason we are requesting a variance for an 8-foot setback is because if our pool starts from 20 foot from the front of the property, it takes us down the yard, which goes down quite a slope and would require us to take out a huge 32 inches, almost huge amount of ground, dirt, topsoil to have this, and also takes it quite a ways down the yard. Also making it closer to the back of the property and the back neighbors. So we're requesting that instead of having the 20-foot setback, that we would have an 8-foot setback.
That would take us away from the slope, further away from the slope.
Okay, will one of you be talking us through the photos that you've given us? Explain what they are.
Sure.
I see you gave us a packet of photos to look at.
Yes. Okay. All right. Yeah. Okay. So what we tried to portray with this is that these hedges, okay, I'm going to start from number one, but these hedges are basically the same height, all the same, height from top to bottom. And so the number one is the view of the hedge line, and this is, my husband is standing where if we had the pool, by the way, I didn't mention this, but the pool's dimension is 15 wide by 30 long. Okay, long meaning going down the slope of the yard.
Mr. Piper, for clarification's sake, as we look at what's being displayed, the photo in question is the upper right. Am I correct?
Correct.
That's actually not my same number one photo, but
Can you tell us this?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
When we're looking at your property from the front, from the street,
yes, sir.
okay? The house is on the left side and there's hedges, this hedgerow's on the right.
That's correct.
Okay. Is your husband standing in front of, on your property side of the hedgerow, and on the other side of that is Etwine Street?
No, actually that hedgerow is the dividing mark between our neighbor, who actually happens to be here tonight. Yeah.
So that goes down, so that same hedgerow I see when I drive down Etwine continues on the right-hand side of your property when I'm facing your property,
That's
correct?
correct. That's correct.
Okay.
And that's it right there.
Okay.
It's going,
Yeah.
and it separates our property from his property.
Okay. Hedges along front. And just help, will someone help me with direction?
Okay.
What would the right side of your property be? Would that be, when you're on Etwine,
Would
would
be
that
the
be
east side, would it not? Or
The
which?
west side.
West side.
west side? Okay.
Uh-huh.
And along west side of property.
So
Okay.
if you would look at those two photographs on the right, just to try to give you some where you're at, that that hedge line on the right, on the top right photo, is also on the west side. That goes the length of the yard. That's the dividing hedge. If you look at the bottom one, that actually is that same hedge line along the left, but then behind my husband, who's standing back there, that's the one that goes along Etwine Street. That's the
Okay.
front of the property.
So is it fair to say probably 6 to 8 feet above the ground, this hedgerow extends
Yes.
up all around? It's
Yeah.
8 foot tall.
8 foot.
Wait.
Yes.
We can't have people, we'll recognize you shortly, sir. We're taking testimony just now from the applicants, so please.
Okay, because I was referring to the lower left photo there where your husband looks like his head's almost near the top of it.
Yeah.
Probably because there's some deviation in the ground or
That
when you
is
trim 'em.
actually what I was trying to, what I was trying to show. There's another photo where he's at where the end of the pool would be at the 20-foot, with the 20-foot setback. And I was trying to show that the difference in when he's going down the side of the yard.
Is that the one in the upper left that you're
No,
talking about?
actually.
It is not.
The
Okay.
top of the hedge is level. That's what she's trying to say. The top of the hedge is level. When you're up toward the front,
Of the yard.
the hedge is only a little bit above my head. When you come down the yard, the hedge is 3 feet above my head. That's how much the slope.
The slope of your yard.
That's trying to show the slope of the yard.
Yeah,
Okay.
if you would see number 3, photo number 3 or exhibit number 3, and even number 1, you would see the difference.
Okay.
I see. Are these? Yeah, see, they're not actually like, oh yeah, they are too. I beg your
Yeah.
pardon.
But there's also a guide to them here, Bill.
Okay.
If you look in the application, they're numbered and then there's a list to match up.
I beg your pardon. I wasn't
Yep.
astute enough to pick that up.
Okay. Burned my money on that one.
Yeah, you did, yeah.
I tried to be organized, but it was a.
No,
It was
no.
Oh, you're more organized than the chair was on that first part of the photo, so that's good for you. Can you talk us through the other photos? then?
Okay, so, all right. So some of the other photos where we're showing, the level and where it would be. Okay, let me make a overall statement. The difference between, if we have to go by the 20-foot setback, the end of the pool, we have to take out almost 32 inches of topsoil. If we move to the 8-foot setback, that end of the pool, that same end of the pool, it's about 11 inches of topsoil.
And that would be the back of the pool. So
Correct. Right.
the end, that's, okay, so
Yes.
32 inches if 20 foot, 11 inches, 8 feet. Okay.
Mhm. Okay, so what a lot of these photos are showing is, it's just showing, let me see which one that is, hold on.
Show how many inches.
Okay. So I believe that top left one is number 5, and that's just showing the 20-foot setback, and that is showing, I'm sorry, I can't see my own photo here, but I think that's showing, it's 31 and a half, close enough to 32 inches. That's for the 20-foot setback.
And you're holding the level just so you can illustrate the slope of the property, am I
Yeah,
correct?
we have a line. We actually have a pin and a line shown. You can see it on the bottom left photo there,
Okay.
showing that. So I'm just trying to look at the bottom left one. I mean, the bottom right one.
Can I ask you another question?
Absolutely.
Do you know what the setback of the front of your home is from Etwine Street?
No setback. We're right up on the front property line.
Okay, so it's a foot or two at most, or almost right up on the street. That's what I thought when I looked at it. Okay.
And can you clarify, that is typical of the entire block, is it not, or?
Yes.
Yes.
It is,
Mhm.
okay, thank you.
So, but according to your discussions with the zoning officer, the required setback for the pool is the same as what the required setback is for the house if it were built today, and that's 20 feet.
I don't know.
I don't know that I realized that, but
Can you clarify that, Mr. Piper? Would the house is the house non-conforming?
No. In
Okay,
the RT district, there's a 0 front yard setback.
okay.
What we typically do is look at the block, the context of the block, and what we do is find an average, and that's what we would have a new structure be built to.
Okay, so the house could be 0, but the pool has to be 20?
Correct.
Okay. In other districts, would the pool have to be 20 feet in other residential districts?
In other residential districts, the pool could not be placed in the front yard, have to be in the side or rear yard, and then it could be as close as 6 feet to the side and rear lot lines.
Okay, but if there's no front yard setback, then there's no front yard in the RT to begin with, right?
Correct. And so this section that specifically discusses this, 1322.03 little y number 1. And I'll just read that section to you.
Mhm.
All pools placed in a residential zoning district shall meet the front yard setback regulations for a structure, except in the RT district, where a minimum setback requirement from the front lot line along any street shall be 20 feet.
Okay. I guess I was having trouble figuring out how that works when the RT building setback was less. It's unusual compared to the other one, other residential districts, correct?
Correct.
Okay. Do you know why it's unique in the RT?
The ordinance, the purpose was to not permit pools to be in front yards. So pools are required to be either located in the side or rear. With the RT district, because there's a 0 front yard setback, and if a structure is built there, you can't really build within a front yard. So that's why that special port was added to make it 20 feet.
Okay. But in another residential zoning district, I could be in a side yard and my front yard setback is only 6 feet.
Well, for example, if you were in the medium density residential district, which we call the RG, your front yard setback is 20 feet. In the residential single family district, the front yard setback is 25 feet. And that is the same front yard setback for the RR rural residential.
Okay, so that's how it gets you, because it says that becomes your front yard, and then it says you can only be in the side or rear yard.
Correct.
And that, okay, now I understand that, why I did it that way. Thank you for the clarification.
Okay, did you want to proceed further with the explanation of the photos?
Yes, if,
No, this is a side yard, right?
yeah, we essentially don't have a front yard. We have a side and a backyard. You know, our yard is enclosed by hedges. We don't have a front yard because our house goes right up to the front of the property line.
We understand.
Okay. Okay, so, okay, where we want to go here? Okay, so I mean, I think basically, unless anybody has any other questions, what I was trying to show with this level here and the level line and the close-ups of that is that when we are at a 20-foot setback, the amount of slope. Oh, and let me also say the front of our yard, the front side of our yard, because we don't have a front, but you know, the part of the yard closest to the street is much more flat than the rest of the yard. It starts to slope and goes to quite a slope, especially when we move down the yard 20 feet. Okay. So what I'm trying to show with the level here is that with the 20-foot setback, we're talking about going 32 inches from that point, but also almost straight up to where the front, the beginning of the pool is, you know, and when I'm saying beginning, I mean the side that's closest to the front property line. And when we get back to, when we go to 8 foot, it's about 11 inches. So, you know, there's concern for the landscaping, for drainage, for, you know, a lot of reasons for the aesthetics of the yard, and, you know, kind of a waste of property too. I mean, of use of land. I shouldn't say property, of use of land. But the biggest thing is just the amount of soil that has to be removed, topsoil that has to be removed. So the next photos where I'm, okay, my husband Michael, what I'm showing there is, okay, I don't know if you can really see it, but I took a low angle shot.
Can you identify the numbers, please?
Yeah, hold on just a second, please. I'll gladly do that. Okay, let me see. Okay. All right, so I'm now looking at number 11, which is right now on the screen is the one on the left. Basically, this is, I'm standing basically where the
End of the pool.
And the pool would be the end closest to the front property line. That is showing a view of the yard and showing Michael in the distance with the 20-foot setback. So if you, it's kind of a strange picture, but if you could look at how much of his body and his legs you can see, okay? You can see that it's much further away and he's further down a slope. If you look at, and this picture of number 12, which is the picture on the right on the screen right now, is at actually a 10-foot setback, not an 8-foot setback, but it just basically is showing the difference in the slope of the yard.
So are you saying that the slope actually increases when you're beyond the 8-foot area?
What?
Is that what you're illustrating with this photo?
What I was trying to illustrate, and maybe I didn't do it so well, but what we were trying to illustrate is that the further you go down the yard, there's much more of a slope.
The more level it is, or less of a slope?
No.
No,
More of a slope.
more of a slope. Yeah.
I'm sorry, can you say again?
What I was trying to say is when you are closer to the front of the property line, okay, that part of it's flatter. But as you go down the yard, when I say down, going towards Gep Street, the rear of the yard, the slope continues. That's what I'm trying to illustrate.
Understood.
And that bottom photo, which is number 13, okay, this is actually showing our neighbor's garage. And the reason I concluded this, or we include this picture, is because it actually shows, you can see from the foundation how much the property slopes, because his building is level and you can see the amount of slope. And that's kind of how the slope of the yard goes from about, I don't know, maybe about, when you go from the front property line to about, maybe about 8 feet.
Basically, our point is the further you go down the yard, the more dirt you're gonna have to take out. And then the step off up front will be 30 some inches if we have to go back to 20 foot, or 12 inches if we only have to go back to 8 foot from the front of the yard, or where the pool would be level.
Okay. Is there anything else?
I think you may have photos. I added some photos later, 14 and 15. I'm not sure if you have them or not. They're just a view of the street, a view of the yard from the street, so the front of the house. And I don't know if they're included, but.
Do we have those, Mr.
That's
Piper?
okay.
You do not.
Okay.
We did not have those.
I had 14.
All right.
I have them.
You did?
Did we
I
get
don't
them
have
in in
15,
time?
but I have 14.
I have 14 and 15.
Okay. Yeah, I'm sorry. I did add those later, and I apologize that you don't have them. But basically what's showing, it was showing the front hedge line, showing the house on the left and the front. But again, we're here, we
You guys
respectfully.
don't have them? Do you wanna
No.
look
Okay.
at- I had 14. I don't have.
We just have one of them. Am I correct? Just 14?
14 and 15.
I have
Yes, 15.
15.
Yeah.
Oh, that's 15? That's
Yeah, here's-
13. Yeah, that one's 14.
yeah.
I think that one's 13, the front of the house.
I don't think we have that one.
This one?
Yeah, I don't think we have that one at all.
Oh,
Is this? Oh, you haven't, Craig. Thank you. All right, never
Craig
mind.
was holding
Thank
out
you.
on it.
You got that.
Thank you, Mr. Pfeiffer.
No.
Okay.
Okay, so 14 is showing a view of the yard from the street, and then you can see the front of the house on the left. And then the 15 is the view of the front of the house and the yard.
that's where the pool would be, is that correct?
That's correct, uh-huh.
The other side of the hedge.
So 14, if I'm looking at your little diagram here,
Yes, sir.
that is looking at the house from an Etline Street perspective,
Yes.
Mhm.
number 14.
with your house on the left and your neighbor's house on the right and a hedgerow in the middle.
Correct. Mm-hmm.
Okay, so your neighbor is to the right,
Yep, 96.
96, and you're proposing to put the pool. So I'm looking at 14. You're proposing to put the pool where the hedgerow is?
On the other side.
Will the pool be behind the hedgerow?
Yeah.
So that you probably won't see the pool from the street?
Right, but that's the side you're gonna put, that's my meant, that you're.
Yeah,
that's where you're-
behind that.
Yep. like-
Yeah, you will not see the pool from the street.
Yep, okay. So then, in the picture in the upper right-hand corner, I'm kind of at 14, that's your neighbor's house, that's 96?
Yes,
Okay.
96.
that's the number for Mike's property.
Oh, okay.
Before we get too deeply into questions, Mr. and Mrs. Arachigo, did you have any additional testimony you wanted to introduce?
No, I wouldn't say testimony. No, we're just here to
Okay.
respectfully request
In-
the variance.
All right, in which case I'm going to open the floor for questions from members of the board. Mr. Schneck?
Sure. Is this a in-ground or out-ground?
Oh, that would have been an important thing to say. It's above ground.
Okay, so, and you're trying to basically, or whatever you do, you have to make the bottom level.
Right.
In which case you're not gonna bring in fill to make it level, you would actually excavate out.
Yes.
So if you're sliding it back, that is, I mean, and you're that close to the hedges, it really could be an issue also for your hedges if you had to excavate down 32 inches. I mean, you kind of almost have a V in your yard, right?
Well, it won't be a V, it'll be a straight drop off for 32 inches if we start 20 foot back. If we come closer to the hedges, it'll only be a drop off of
Right.
this much.
Yeah.
And then we're gonna get it all
Landscape.
landscaped.
And then are you also going to be required to put a fence up?
But we have the hedge.
Does that suffice as the, I don't know, the 4-foot barrier that people can't get through? I'm not sure. I don't.
We made,
Wait, excuse me, Mr. Piper, can you just elaborate on the safety requirements should the relief be granted?
Sure. So the requirement for a fence is typically associated with an in-ground pool as opposed to an above-ground pool. Typically, the height of an above-ground pool makes it such that a toddler couldn't just accidentally fall into it. If that is a requirement under the building code, which is where it would fall, then they would have to comply with that as part of their application for permit to install the pool.
All right, thank you. I just wanted your clarification rather than asking for an opinion. I'm sorry, Mr. Schneck, I interrupted you.
No. I guess I don't have any other questions right now.
Okay, and we can come back to Mr. Novotny, questions. from you.
Question for Mr. Piper. Is there a difference between a setback required for an above ground and a below ground pool?
There is not.
That's my only question.
Okay, Ms. Shea Gardner?
Are there any electrical lines above the property?
No.
Thank you.
Anything else, Linda?
No.
No. Mr. Schatz?
No questions.
I have no further questions. Attorney Schock, anything from you?
No, and I would just say we will admit the application and the photos as their exhibits.
Okay, all right, terrific.
Mr.
Before
Fitzpatrick, I just want to make one
Yes, sir.
comment to add to, or at least respond back to Linda's question. The city has a 10-foot minimum requirement from any overhead power line or overhead utility. So the pool could not be placed any closer than 10 feet.
Thank you for that clarification. Sir, did you have any questions of the testimony that you just heard? You'll have an opportunity to give us a comment later, okay? Okay, thank you. Are there any members with us online who would wish to ask, this is questions only of the testimony that you just heard? If so, would you please unmute your microphone and identify yourself? Hearing none. Did you have any additional testimony or anyone else you wanted to testify on your behalf that you want to present?
I,
Our neighbor.
no.
You're going to call him as a witness or? Because we'll give him an opportunity to make a statement afterward. Okay.
Okay,
All right.
that's fine.
And in which case, at this point, I would open the floor for comments or testimony. And sir, if you'd like to offer any comments, please step to the microphone and identify yourself and give us your address.
Go to that
You can use that one.
Yeah, how close to neighbors are you guys?
I am next door. I am Mike Daniels. I live at 33 West Etwine Street. And I think the pool would be a fantastic thing. The hedges wrap that building in like an L. The house is on the other side. There's no problem with anything. I have no complaints. I'm willing to, whatever they need to do, let's do it.
Okay, sir.
That's about it. Everybody have a super evening.
Thanks very much.
Sounds like they've told you could use the pool.
Well, yeah, we won't get into those conditions, but. And again, I would invite anyone who's with us online, if you would like to offer a comment or introduce testimony, please unmute your microphone and identify yourself. Speaking either in favor or in opposition. Hearing none. Can we just go offline now or?
Yeah.
Off the record and deliberate? Did you have anything additional that you wanted us to hear? Okay, thank you. Gene, we're going to go off the record. You want to go ahead, sir?
Just make it easier.
Gene, I'd like to go back on the record and I'd welcome a motion from a member of the board.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion that the relief be granted for a installation of a pool at 27 West Etwine Street, with the condition that in the event that the present hedgerow is removed, that it be replaced with some type of fencing at least 6 foot in height.
Was there another,
That's gonna.
another condition with regard to potential electrical lines or that sort of thing?
I think he's gonna tell us that it's a 4 foot.
Thank you.
I was at 4 foot maximum.
Yeah,
Okay.
so along the sidewalk, that fence can only be 4 feet in height. Now, the moment you get behind that plane, it can go up to 6 feet.
All right. Would you care to amend the,
Yeah, I'll amend it that in the event that the hedgerow is removed, that a fence be installed which is appropriate to the conditions surrounding the electrical system in the area.
okay, may I have a second to the motion?
I'll second.
All right, Mr. Pfeiffer, if you'd call the roll, please.
Mr. Schneck,
Yes.
Mr. Novatnik,
Yes.
Ms. Gardner,
Yes.
Mr. Shantz,
Yes.
Mr. Fitzpatrick.
Yes.
Can I just clarify something? Is the condition that they would put a 4 foot fence along the property line, or that they move behind the property line and put a 6 foot fence?
No, I would propose that the fence be put where the hedgerow is.
Okay, which would have to then be a 4 foot.
Correct.
Right.
Okay, I just wanted to clarify that.
Okay. Again, your appeal's been granted. I might suggest that you wait to receive the written decision. And again, I would check in with the zoning officer if you would. And thank you for coming and show support for the application.
Thank
Thank
you,
you.
everybody.
Thank
Thank
you.
Thank you for your
too.
time.
Now you can fess up. Are you going to let him use your pool? I figured,
He wants to be the first in.
but he brings, yeah, okay.
Believe it or not, we formally haven't asked him, but he has a welcome.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Oh, that's
All right.
Have a nice evening.
Thank you. Good night. Thanks again.
Thank you very much.
All right, one more to get through. Let's see. Oh, use variance, oh boy.
Mhm. This is gonna be interesting. That's not on the record.
That's why I tried to push this down.
Yeah, no.
Our next and final hearing for this evening involves 315 West Broad Street and the appeal of Joel Moyer for use variance. Would Mr. Moyer or anyone else wishing to either question or testify, please stand, raise your right hand and be sworn in.
Swear by Almighty God, the searcher of all hearts, that the testimony that you shall give in this proceeding to be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, and that you shall answer the God of the last great day. Is this correct?
I do.
You may be seated.
Mr. Moyer, can you tell us when the property was posted?
I posted it, what did I picked it up? I'd have to look at my record to give you the exact date.
Can you give us an approximation? Was it a week ago or more than that?
It was more than that. It was the day that Craig sent me the email
Okay.
that I was ready to pick it up at
Okay.
City Hall.
Okay, we can proceed. Why don't you proceed with your presentation, with your testimony?
Well, I like to say the house actually was.
Can you speak into the microphone?
Sure, sorry. The property was actually never even formally separated. They have it listed as or zoned as a storefront or office on the first floor and an apartment on the second floor. However, as you walk in, it's just as it was built, over 100 years ago. There's no walls separating the apartment. It's not chopped up in any way. It still has a beautiful staircase. These are all things I like to just preserve and turn it back into its original intent as a single family home. And, I've already stripped down the front doors. They're the old beautiful original wood doors. They're going to get a nice clear coat. I mean, it's going to be fantastic. And I just want to bring out some of that rich history.
even the scribing in the windows, I mean, we're stripping that out, bringing out all that stuff back. Just to really try to preserve it. And what I'd like to do is just convert it back to a single family home. I will note that also the two properties next to me, they're not offices or storefronts either. They're apartments, but they're not storefronts or offices. So I think it'll blend right in my opinion.
Excuse me, when you say next to me, do you mean on either side of you?
Yes, correct.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
I'll also add, there is enough room for parking for at least 2 cars in the rear.
Mr. Pfeiffer, am I correct? There's no request for a variance with relation to parking?
Correct.
Thank you.
Mr. Pfeiffer, could you just clarify something that Mr. Moyer said? He said it's never been converted into the office and the residence on the second floor. Has the first floor, even though it may not have been physically renovated, has it been used as an office previously?
That was the last previous use, correct.
Okay. Is there no requirement for there to be separation? So in other words, was that office use actually under the code legal if in fact it hadn't been separate from the apartment?
Correct. And Mr. Moyer can clarify if I get this incorrect, but my understanding was that the person that occupied the office also occupied the residence on the upper floors.
Go ahead.
Yes, the person that occupied it before did in fact live up there, or they used it for their own personal. I'm not sure if they actually lived there. There's not even a kitchen in the apartment. They had a hot plate and a sink in the attic. So it's an easy, it makes perfect sense to me at least. There's not even a kitchen up there.
What kind of office was it?
I believe he had some kind of a handicap accessible company like elevators or ramp. I'm not sure exactly. I don't really know the previous owner very well.
So what was it? It wasn't a store though.
No, it was an office. It was an office.
It's like a business office.
Correct, yeah.
Do you have any way of knowing if the entire building was used as a residence at any time?
I don't know. I don't know.
Can we ask if the city's records reflect that?
Presumably when the structure was built, it was built as a single family dwelling. So it had been occupied for a certain period of time.
So would it have been a residential zone at one time or for that use if it wasn't formally designated?
It probably, well, not probably, the building predates the zoning ordinance.
Okay. But your feeling is that it was constructed as a residence?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Do you have any additional testimony you wanted to introduce?
I don't really have anything else unless there's any questions for me.
Okay, why don't we try and dry out any issues? Mr. Schneck, questions from you?
Sure. Are you sandwiched in between 2 residential properties?
Yes, yes.
Would you say you'd have a hard time finding a renter probably for an office use in between those 2?
It can be tricky, I would imagine. I just think for me personally, I believe that this property, especially since it shows all those great original details, I think it's begging to be converted back to its original use. It's not so much, I think it's difficult. It could be difficult to have rental office space, but I don't even think it's so much about that. I feel that it would shine much more as its original single family.
Sure.
That's just
I guess my follow-up question kind of, you might be able to, but it'd also probably be difficult to rent the residential portion without a kitchen, right?
Correct. Yeah. There's no kitchen at all. And what I intend on doing is I don't want to keep it as rental. I mean, I want to make it right and fix it, to be top of its caliber of its competitors and sell it at, the highest possible spot I could sell it at to, someone who's going to love and care for the place.
All right. Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Novotny.
No questions.
Ms. Shea Gardner.
No questions.
Mr. Shantz.
I noticed that on the existing first floor, the third office back, on your renovation plans, you have designated, was that where the original kitchen was?
Yes, that's correct. It's already been ripped out. Since I bought it, it was already ripped out. But it looks like along that wall would be on the back side of the half bath there. There was like a small kitchenette, but it's already been ripped out prior to my purchasing it.
Were there gas, do you know offhand if there are gas lines coming into the building for a stove or?
There is no gas in the building right now. They have oil heat, but I would like to convert it to gas. Regardless of the outcome, I wanted to put gas in, so I already have a call-in with UGI.
Are there water lines coming into that?
The water comes in the front from Broad Street.
No, but are there, for us like a sink or a stove?
Oh, yes, yes.
Are there actually lines coming up from the basement into that area?
They do, yes. They run across the basement and then come up. The main service comes in the front, and then it runs through from the front of the property, and it does come up through the basement wall, up to that wall, through that line.
So that one time there were water lines there for, that may have represented a sink?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. But no gas line?
No gas.
Thank you.
Yes.
Okay, Mr. Moyer, earlier, I believe you testified that there were parking spaces around the rear of the property. Am I correct? Can you describe them?
There's room for at least 2 parking spaces. Right now,
Are they currently parking spaces? Is it paved or stone?
It's stone, but the grass has grown through. But it is stone underneath that grass that the old owner had put stone down, and he used to park vehicles there, he told me. But since then, it was neglected for some time before I bought it.
Is that part of, assuming you do the renovations necessary to market it as a single-family dwelling, is it your plan that would be offered as parking for the new owners?
Absolutely, yes.
I have no other question. Just one canvas to the group. Any last questions from the board members? Then, Mr.
I just have a few for the record, if I could. If you know, and maybe if not, Mr. Piper can help us, to create 2 separate units that would meet code that you could lease out, an apartment on the first floor and a business on the second floor, would you have to actually do renovations also?
Oh, for sure. Yeah, the property needs a lot of renovations regardless to be up to code. I had, Phil from the city who's out for the commercial, and then I believe Joe was out for the residential portion. But I have the CO listing, and it needs quite a bit of work either way. So I didn't move forward with much of anything other than just restoring those doors, the porch and things like that, things I'm going to do regardless.
Just Mr. Piper, if he were required to put in a kitchen, for example, to finish the apartment on the second floor, and then he wanted to rent out the first floor, would there be code modifications that he would need to create that separate space?
Yes.
Okay. So one of the issues is there's not 2 distinct spaces as it is now.
Correct.
And then secondly, the first floor business space is actually not permitted either. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay, so it's because it's not a restaurant, retail, or personal service as the prior use either, correct?
Correct.
Okay. How many parking spaces would be needed if you put an apartment on the second floor and you put a restaurant, retail, or personal service on the first floor? Because I'm guessing he'd be actually at a deficit then parking wise.
So if this were to be newly constructed, the dwelling would require 2 spaces.
Okay.
The office is going to be based upon the square footage.
Well, it couldn't be an office though, right? Because that's not allowed.
Okay. If it was a restaurant,
I guess pick retail because that goes by square footage.
so the easiest way to look at this, it says parking for all business-related vehicles plus 4 spaces per 1,000 square feet of gross floor area.
Okay. So you're looking at 6 required if you actually did the conversion that's permitted.
Correct.
Okay. I think that's all I had, Bill.
Okay, Attorney Checks, thank
I
you.
just had one question.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay, sorry about that. Mr. Moyer, when you and I met, we talked about the off-street parking, and you agreed that you would improve that stoned grass area with a solid material that would be suitable to the, or approved by the city engineer, such as asphalt, concrete, or paver block.
Hmm.
And that there was enough space back there for to easily accommodate 2 spaces that would pull in from the alley, correct?
That's correct.
And if the board were to make that a condition of approval, that you pave that or use concrete or another material, you would be okay with that?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Oh, I did have one last question.
Go ahead,
I apologize. Can you mentioned the 2 apartments on either side. Can you tell me the character of the neighborhood? Are there, I think, am I not correct? There are some businesses, but there are other residences in addition to just the 2 next to you?
That's correct. There are some storefronts there. It's a mix, you know, I mean, it's a great West Bethlehem neighborhood. I'm a West Bethlehem guy, born and raised. I love that area. And, you know, it's a good mix. But right next to me on both sides, it is, I believe it's a two units or possibly a 3 unit. I'm not sure exactly, but they're all residential. And then skipping one down, there's a storefront and then there's residential apartments above it.
Do you know, across the street, is there actually a single family house? Is one of them still a single family house?
I believe so,
Okay.
yes.
At least it looks in appearance.
Sure. Yeah, I believe there is.
Okay, that's all I had then.
Okay, Attorney Shack, thank you. At this point, I would welcome questions. This would be questions only from anyone with us online. If so, please unmute your microphone and identify yourself. Hearing no questions, Mr. Moyer, was there anything else before I open up for possible testimony from people in the audience?
I don't have anything further.
All right, thank you. At this point, and then I would make the same offer to anyone with us online. If you would like to offer comment or introduce testimony, please unmute your microphone and identify yourself. Hearing none, Mr. Moyer, am I correct? You have no additional testimony?
That's correct.
And then we'll just make his submission, his exhibit.
That's good. Shall we go out? Gene, I'd like
Yeah.
to go off the record. Let's go into executive section just briefly. Shane, I'd like to go back on the record and I'd welcome a motion from a member of the board.
Sure. I'll make a motion to grant relief sought with the condition to provide parking area constructed of the material and size that has been reviewed and accepted by the city engineer. And that the renovation be consistent with the testimony tonight.
Second.
Mr. Schneck,
Yes.
Mr. Novatnik,
Yes.
Ms. Gardner,
Yes.
Mr. Schnantz,
Yes.
Mr. Fitzpatrick.
Yes. Your appeal's been granted. I might suggest you wait for the written decision, but again, stay in close contact with Mr. Piper and the appropriate authorities at the city, but good luck with the project.
Thank you.
Thank you. Having no other business before the zoning hearing board for this evening, this meeting is adjourned.
Thank you.